851, turn right heading 180. Order 14 Papa, turn right 245, report localizer established.
Hey everyone, welcome back to DJ's Aviation. A topic of great interest to me is the delivery problems currently impacting the Boeing 737s at the Renton facility. You may recall I did make a video earlier about the situation, and a card can be found in the top right if you want a brief rundown on what has actually been occurring. However, in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at some updates, and a few of the impacts that these problems are having on carriers specifically. A big thanks has to go out to a viewer who personally went down to Renton to collect this footage for the channel of the 737s piled up. In new developments, we've begun to learn more according to various sources like the Seattle Times, that the problems are escalating and are now impacting employees who are facing overtime in what has now become a race against the clock to try and get the critical parts required to complete the 737s and get them on the way. In fact, they aren't simply a nut or a bolt missing. They are items like engines from CFM and also fuselages, which of course are essential to the completion of the aircraft. Previously, I reported that the build-up was rather extensive. However, now, at the time of recording, there are some 53 undelivered 737 jets, which are just sat parked up at Boeing's Renton plant. This is an increase of 13 in comparison to the month of August. Thankfully, according to the Seattle Times again, they received communication from Boeing, and this is actually now going to be the peak of the problems. Essentially, this does mean that the undelivered 737s will begin to drop, and this should sort itself out as the year moves along and comes to a close. However, in saying that, it still means that undelivered jets will be facing a large wait time until completion. There are quite a number of implications that impact airlines through this sort of problem, and this can include scheduling problems, which I did briefly touch on in another video, but I would like to go more in depth in this one. Airlines schedule flights months in advance. For example, they'll announce a new route in, let's say, January and begin it in November. This usually will tie in with the arrival of a new aircraft. In turn, this sometimes frees up an existing plane, which then can be placed on that route. Alternatively, they just place that brand new aircraft on that route. Airlines that are impacted by the delivery delays are facing this exact problem. Even if new routes don't have a release date, airlines will still be facing scheduling difficulties and processes that are usually taken for granted, like the crew training, aircraft testing within the airline, and more alike. In other developments, Reuters published a story detailing the news that Boeing were bringing back their retired workers to help fix the delays currently impacting the 737. In my earlier video, I did mention that Boeing were in more trouble because these shortages and delays of key parts have quite literally come just after a number of workers entered their retirement phase of life. This has left Boeing with fresh faces, but also inexperienced ones, who while being able to cope with the issues, certainly cannot manage to this extent on their own. The rapid production increase on Boeing's part has led to these shortages of, as mentioned, the engines and fuselages. The company has also declared that they'd be hiring new people, which is roughly at 600, but they did not note how many they would rehire who have now gone into retirement. If we're talking CFM International now, those engines which are being delayed in arrival should be cleared by the end of this year, but it is still impacting the likes of American Airlines, who have seen delays on the deliveries of their 737 MAX aircraft. The Air Lease Corporation are also seeing delays of around a month. The underlying problem is not production, as workers and Boeing do note that this is moving along well and far better than the previous months. In fact, two workers did say to a source that the engine supply chain is improving, but the underlying problem, as I said, is the assembly line and obtaining all the required parts to complete the aircraft. While half of the plane may be complete, they may be missing something like a wing, and in turn this aircraft cannot be completed, delivered, and then begin operations. An analogy I can put forward to simplify this just to those potentially that are a bit confused is, let's say you've purchased an IKEA shelf. However, 5 of the bolts are missing. You can therefore not put the back or sides on it, and then therefore cannot complete the piece. This is what is occurring with Boeing and their 737s. So while you might go out and buy the one shelf, Boeing have a continuous stream of aircraft that they need to build. So if they can't complete one, they have to push that outside, and this is where the build-up is actually occurring. Anyway, that is the latest developments in regards to the 737s currently sitting outside Renton. I do hope you all enjoyed that footage taken by my viewer. I do really appreciate that, and I look forward to you all joining me in the next one.
erase all of these broken dreams in flight, and we'll fly.